Hey guys, got Ryan7 again. This time with a review of the 1/44 scale real great Gundam Astray gold frame Amatsu Mina from the Gundam Seed Astray manga series. When it comes to looks, there is no doubt in my mind that this is the best looking real great so far, with the only real competition being the Sinanju. The combination of the black, the gold, with little touches of red here and there is one of the best color schemes ever. And then we have the purple, which just helps to break up the color scheme even more. Add to that the typical real great spiel of having different shades, and we get an even more impressive looking machine. When it comes to the gold, we have two shades, and the funny thing about the gold is that the different shades actually help to differentiate between the parts that were already on the red frame and the new parts. The new parts are a much darker and way better looking gold, and then the recycled parts are lighter, not quite as good. And no, none of the gold parts are coated, unfortunately. What is coated, however, is the black. The first thing you'll notice is that we have the difference between the nice glossy shiny black and the matte black. Right here you can really see the difference, but when you look closer you will see that there's even more differences in color. You have a piano black and then a slightly lighter, more grayish black. Unfortunately, when you have this very nice shiny black, there is one thing you would expect: undergating. And that is the one thing that you will not find on this model kit. Almost at all. There are a handful of parts that are undergated, but almost none of them are on the parts you'd actually want them to. And also, none of them are on the gold parts, which I was halfway expecting, because if the gold parts were undergated, that would allow Bandai in the future to release a P Bandai with actual coated gold. So yeah, it looks like that's also out of the window, unless it's going to be Nupmark hell. Putting those small things aside, fortunately, the Astray gold frame is still an absolutely gorgeous looking machine. And what will also help for that is our slide of stickers, with a lot of metallic ones to make it even more stunning, and then a bunch of marking stickers. As usual with the real greats, we get two options for the eyes, or technically even more. You have the ones that completely cover up the eyes, then you have these which are see-through, so you have the choice here. Either you keep the blue that's behind, which is this blue, which will make the eye stand out slightly less, or if you want the 3D effect, you can put these separate eyes on there to have, well, the nice 3D effect. So a lot of eye options and a lot of options in general with these stickers. Under the hood, as you've probably already guessed, because this is a remold of the Astray red frame, we get the same inner frame as the Astray red frame. It's just that, well, the colors have been slightly changed, meaning that the Amatsu Mina will have the same awesome articulation as the red frame. There is, however, one difference with the inner frame, and that is the right arm. Now, a cool thing for a real great is that the right arm actually has to be assembled, rather than the usual cut it from the runner, slide it in the right pose, and you have your inner frame. So it is Amatsu Mina is definitely a unique looking mobile suit with its asymmetrical design. So let's see how that frame works with the Amatsu Mina and move on to articulation. The head goes nicely upwards, a little bit down, and side to side if you're very careful, but it's got those giant mandibles coming from the sides, which actually also go up and down onto the arms. Now the shoulders go up nicely like that on the joint inside, then the arms go up all the way like that. And once again, you gotta be careful with those mandibles. They really like to get in the way. And then we'll also go forwards a bit, backwards a bit, and this flap will also go up and down. Then on the other side with the blitz arm, pretty much the exact same thing. Goes up nicely like that, then the arm will go up as well like that. We get the forwards and the backwards movement, and this thing came off. Then they rotate around, bend at the elbow, Now, the thing with the Astray arms is the elbow themselves don't really go as far as you'd want them to. However, there is a second joint which falls out and compensates for that. So at first I thought, oh cool, there's an extra joint for even more articulation, but actually it's just to counteract the weak elbow joint. Fortunately, when we move to the other side, this will also rotate around all the way. Then the elbow bends at 2 joints and does pretty much the same thing that the other side does with 3 joints. The hands on here are just your standard molded hands, whereas on the Astray side, we do have the usual Astray hands. We have the bottom 3 fingers molded together, and then the top finger, the thumb, all movable on ball joints and 1 hinge joint. Now, technically, you could also put the Astray hand that you get for the right side in there to get that movement, but moving on with the waist, goes forwards really nicely on those joints, and then we have an extra joint, which, believe it or not, gives us butt armor separation. I did not expect I would ever use that in one sentence. There is butt armor separation. Now, as far as this thing moves back forwards, it moves backwards pretty much nothing at all. Now, I'm going to assume that that was done in order to compensate for the enormous backpack this thing has, which in my book is a good thing. And side to side, also nicely. Then onto the legs, they go forwards really nicely. There we go, backwards also really nicely because, well, no real back skirt to speak of. Then we'll put them back down. They will rotate around slightly and also go out all the way like that until these red pieces start coming in contact with the front skirts. Bend at the knees at 2 joints, and look at that armor separation. This moves, that separates, that moves. My God, that is a knee to be proud of. Really, really good looking. Then the feet, now this is where it gets slightly hindered by the design of our Amatsu Mina. Forwards only about that far because, well, this would get in the way. We have the toe that also gets kind of in the way. Backwards, nicely like that at a double joint. Now this part really likes to fall off, only on the left foot for one reason or another. The right foot is pretty okay. Now, unlike most real grays, there's no real toe joint to speak of. They decided to make this one giant piece and side to side nicely, and then we'll also rotate around all the way. And talking about this annoying piece, it also goes up and down. So overall, the articulation, while it could have been slightly better here and there, overall is great, because the most important thing to say about the articulation is that everything feels solid. A very important thing to mention for a real grade, because they don't have the best reputation when it comes to that. So I think it's fair to say that the Astray Gold Frame sacrifices some articulation here and there for its structural integrity, which is going to be increasingly important when we attach the giant backpack, which, believe me, it works great. Now let's gear up our bad boy, starting off with the Trickeros Kai. So this thing comes with its own dedicated trigger finger hand, which is attached to the handle with a peg for maximum security. And the overall Trickeros Kai just looks amazing. Very sharp looking, really cool blade on there. And also these spears / missiles are all on there separately, so you can make it look like just one was fired. One cool hidden feature is that the pegs that connect the spears to the Trickeros Kai also just happen to fit into the slots of the holding hands. So yeah, you can show that your gold frame pilot also loved the piano. Then for the left arm, we get 2 options. For starters, if you want your gold frame to cosplay as Wolverine, we have the Tsumu Hanotachi. Now it looks like it deals a nasty punch, but once you fold this open, and extend the claws, it's time to get to business. However, one complaint I have about the Tsumohano Tachi is that it seems that the claws aren't really functional because they don't extend far enough. I mean, if you would try to claw someone in the traditional way, the hand would get in the way. The second option is the Okuchi no Kagami, and the cool thing about this one is that depending on the configuration, it can be used as either a shield or a spear. By folding it up and attaching this gorgeous looking beam effect part, you get the shield, which is unfortunately sometimes dragged down by gravity, because this thing is made to extend, and for some reason, sometimes it stays on really well, and sometimes it just drops down a little bit. But as you can see now, because it's on camera probably, it wants to stay on perfectly. Usually it's the other way around. And when folded down, we get the beam spear with this gorgeous looking beam effect part. And that's the thing I was talking about. It has a tendency to drop down slightly because gravity. Now this is also the gimmick of the thing. If you want more reach, you simply extend it. And if you want even more reach, this thing is detachable. And we also get this thick cord. And I think this is one of the only times where there's a kind of grappling hook where the end actually stays up reasonably well on its own. But just in case it's sagging a bit too much, we get a really nicely articulated stand for the grappling hook. And this is actually really high quality just for a grappling hook. Then the final thing before moving on to the backpack is a pair of Totsuka no Tsurugi sabers. And despite being only a single piece each, they are really nicely detailed. On top of that, they fit perfectly into both the closed holding hands and into the real great holding hands. With all those big and intricate accessories, it's always good to see how something so simple can still be so awesome. But just in case you don't want to use them, you can always store them on the side skirts. Now the time has come to talk about the backpack, and one hell of an awesome thing it is. Not just does it look fantastic, but it's also got a lot of things going for it. For starters, the articulation opens up very nicely like that. Then we've got a hinge joint here. It goes backwards only a little bit, forwards a lot. And this is of course going to come in handy for the Magano Ikatuchi energy absorption claws. We'll also rotate around there. Then when we go a little bit further onto the Magano Ikatuchi claws themselves, in typical real great fashion, they've got some opening gimmicks. This opens up to reveal some of the detail there. This panel slides open really nicely. Then this opens up, and that also is on a hinge joint. When attached to the gold frame, it makes for an intimidating machine that's still surprisingly stable with those giant things going on. For the people who can't get enough of harpooning their enemies, we also get one wire, which the manual wants us to cut in two, for the Magashiro no Hoko harpoons. So you can launch them at the enemy at your heart's content. Maybe you're less of a harpoon guy and more someone who likes to suck their enemies dry. Well, the Magano Ikatuchi energy absorption claws in this configuration have you covered. Originally, contact had to be made, but upon improvement, you can just suck your enemies dry from a distance. This thing is scary. And then the final accessories that we get with this thing, we get an action-based connector for an action-based number 2 if you want to put this scary thing in even more intricate poses. We get a tiny, tiny figure in 1/44 scale of Rondo Mina Sahaku, the pilot of the Amatsu Mina. Then we also get a few extra hands. We get an open palm hand and also the usual real great closed fist hands. And the final usable accessory that we're getting is, because this is a remold of the Astray red frame, we get a, well, the arm itself is complete. This is a full right Astray arm. What isn't complete, however, is the shoulder armor, we lack just the front piece. If we'd gotten that, we could have given this thing a symmetrical and more traditional Astray look. One thing we're also not getting, the feet, the complete feet. If we'd gotten those, we could have built a previous version of the Amatsu Mina, which I was kind of hoping for. Other than that is just some junk that we're getting that was also used with the Astray red frame, like little bits of the feet, the shield connector, like a different part for the face, and so on and so forth. The final one, which is technically usable, is we get 2 of the old shins, so you could have a less detailed shin. If you don't like this thing that's going on there, you could put this instead. And heck, we're even getting this part from the shield as leftover parts. So yeah, finally I want to talk about an accessory that wasn't included, but was promised in one of the promotional pictures. More specifically, this one. Now, where on earth could that beam saber have gone? Yeah, it seems like Bandai kind of forgot about that. Now, you would think that, oh, you just grab an extra beam blade, you put it in there. Well, unfortunately, it's not that simple. The whole of the Tricaros Kai's beam rifle is simply too big for both a 1/44 scale beam saber and even for a 100 scale beam saber. So to me, it seems like they simply kind of forgot that there was a beam saber that was supposed to go into the beam rifle, and they decided to just go, you know what, if it doesn't fit, we just won't include it. Fortunately, if you do have a spare beam saber hanging around, you can just put some clear tape on it, and then you will have a beam that fits in there. And I highly recommend you do this because, man, the Tricaros Kai is awesome on its own, but it gets even better with a beam effect part. I mean, what doesn't get better with a beam effect part? As always, the inevitable question is, do you want to buy this? And well, for 3,000 yen, this thing is an amazing deal. For starters, the Astray gold frame just looks absolutely gorgeous with that shiny piano black, the gold, the little details, absolutely amazing. Then on top of that, you have great articulation and sturdy, which is the most important thing for a real grade. And then the accessories, oh my god, just so much accessories, so many gimmicks to play around with, and all that for only 3,000 yen? I can totally recommend this model kit to anyone who likes the Astray, Gundam Seed, badass mobile suits, more asymmetrical mobile suits, or pretty much to anyone, really. Sure, not everything might be 100% superb with this model kit, but the positives way outweigh the negatives. It had been a while since I bought my last real grade, but man, am I glad I decided to pick this thing up, and I highly recommend you to do the same. Now, the last remaining question is just, when are we going to get a real grade Blitz? Then for size comparisons, first of all, here is next to the real grade Freedom and the real grade Gundam Mark II. 2 really good real grades for 2,500 yen, but perhaps not quite as good as the gold frame. Then next to the high grade Jin and the high grade Slaughter Dagger, 2 grunts that are very much at risk of being sucked dry by the gold frame. And finally, here is next to the standard size Jim and the always bulky Zaku 3. And that's all for the review of my new favorite real grade, and see you all next time.